Softball skills are coming in handy. Ooh, is that a little too loud? Can y'all hear me okay? Okay, great. So we are coming to you live today from the beautiful Riverview Terrace in San Angelo, Texas. This is the Homebuilders Association of San Angelo, and we are presenting the Congressional Candidate Forum to you, which is streaming live through KSAN. Today we have Wacy Cody representing the Libertarian Party. We have John Mark Hogue representing the Democratic Party, and August Pfluger representing the Republican Party. We are going to go in alphabetical order, starting with the first question, and we will rotate accordingly for each question after. These questions have come in from our membership, and so there will be no questions from the floor. The candidates will actually stay afterward if you would like to visit with them, so we ask you to be attentive and have a good forum. Our first question. As Americans, we are concerned about the lawlessness in the streets of America that have been brought on by recent events. How would you address this criminal behavior? Mr. Cody?
Well, maybe it's a little simplistic, but you made your bed, now you lay in it. Any part of this nation, if your elected officials are allowing the citizens therein to behave as lawless psychopaths and destroy property, it's not my job to then pay for it. And it's none of your jobs to pay for stuff going on in other parts of the nation. If it happens in this town, I expect as a citizen my police to be funded, and I expect my elected officials to empower those police to protect me and my fellow citizens. And with that being said, I don't think any of our tax dollars should go to a completely different state or a different part of even our state when their officials are allowing them to behave that way.
To me, this really comes down to a couple of questions. The short answer, of course, is that as far as the crimes go, any crimes that are committed during these events, of course, they have to be prosecuted according to the due course of the law, whether that's murder, arson, vandalism, damages to property, assault. All of those need to be prosecuted, both for protesters, counter-protesters, and even public officials that commit those offenses during these sort of protests. But I think the larger question that lies underneath that is, how did this happen to us? How did we get into this situation, and what do we do about it? And I think it's important that we keep in mind a bit of perspective, that we not overreact to the situation that's going on in our country. According to a recent Princeton University study, since George Floyd's death, there have been approximately 10,600 protests across the United States of America. That's a huge number to fathom. Of those, 10,100 of those did not involve violence. About 570 of those did. That's about 5% of the 10,600 protests we've had across this country involved violence. And what we have to start thinking about is, what are the circumstances? What is it that has brought this about? And we have to look at it in the context of what is happening right now. What is happening right now is the COVID pandemic, where we've got 180, almost 190,000 people dead. The economy is collapsed. We've got to start thinking about those and listening to what the issues are in the communities that we're talking about, and the protests that are going on to address those issues.
Good afternoon. My name is August Pfluger, and I appreciate very much the opportunity to be here. Janice and the Homebuilder Association, thank you all for setting this up, and it is a wonderful day in West Texas because there is rain. But on a somber note, we got right into the questions of the day, and I want everybody in this room to imagine yourself sitting at an outdoor cafe like we had yesterday in Pittsburgh, and having the harassment and the threat of violence come up to your table and take your drink from your table with the threat that if you don't do what they say to do while they're yelling insults and hurling any number of words, then they are going to use violence against you, like we have seen. And maybe those numbers are true. I haven't read the study from Princeton, but what I am looking at is reality. The Dallas Police Department just this week voted to defund their police by $7 million. If we, as a country, don't take this seriously, it can get out of hand. And it may be a small minority of folks who are causing this trouble. I would like to believe that. First and foremost, I stand with our law enforcement, with Sheriff Hanna, with Chief Carter, with Sheriff Toombs, who I spoke to yesterday in Mitchell County, and he asked me, Mr. Pfluger, will you please stand up for all law enforcement? Will you make sure that when you get to Washington, you're going to stand for our law enforcement, that you're going to take care of the people that are keeping our community safe? And I said, absolutely. I stand behind every single law enforcement officer that's doing the right thing, which I believe 99.9% of them are doing that. It's our job in Congress to make sure that we allow those local law enforcement officers to do their job, that we look at qualified immunity and we make sure that their liability doesn't reach into the civil side, that they can do their jobs and that we can all rest safe in our homes. Thank you very much.
All right. Would you be in support of an annual cost of living adjustment for Social Security recipients that mirror the yearly increase in Medicare medical insurance premiums? Why or why not? Mr. Hogue?
I think the larger question may be how much longer we're going to have Medicare. But the issue that we're talking about today on the Medicare Part B is a relatively simple issue. Medicare Part B, on an annual basis, premiums are raised, which comes out of the Social Security benefit that our seniors are entitled to under the Social Security Act. This really impacts those who are less fortunate, lower income, because the premium is taken out of your Social Security benefit, which eats into any rise in the Social Security benefit that is given. In my opinion, we need to match the increase in the premium to the Social Security benefit so that it's an offset, so that there's not at least any further reduction in what the Social Security benefit that our seniors are going to be receiving is done, as opposed to the premium increase. So.
Well, I think right now when you look at the Social Security actuaries, right, we have a 1.6% cost of living increase that has happened in 2020. That has reached 70 million people in the U.S. this year. But the larger question is, let's look at our health care, and especially in District 11, 29 counties, a lot of rural health care, where we have an overregulated state because of Obamacare that has made it almost impossible for rural hospitals to provide the health care because of the compliance issues and the regulations that they face, and it's making it more and more difficult. In Breckenridge, Texas, the hospital sits 32 miles away from the Eastland Hospital, so they don't qualify for a critical access healthcare location, which means that they don't get the federal funding that they need, but they're still required to comply with all the regulations that we saw for 8 years, from 2008 to 2016. And so we have to continue to chip away at that in order to provide this district, which has 29 counties and a lot of rural health care, the type of assistance that they need so that we can continue to take care of the folks that are right here in District 11.
So, sadly for my generation, Social Security might not be there. I get that. I also know that my taxes pay for my parents. They did their part to take care of their parents. I'll do that to take care of mine. But Social Security and all of the taxes that we pay are theft at this point, in my opinion. You give $1 to the government, you get 50 cents back if you're lucky. With that being said, no, I would not increase the cost of living for Social Security. I think to all of our benefit is to reduce the cost across the board of every good. As the fellow up there speaking said about the home pack, when they were able to get the back taxes reduced on development land, how they were able to pass on that savings down the line, that's how you, across the economy, across the board, reduce the cost of goods and services. Let the free market thrive and the goods and services speak for themselves. You don't continually take from one group to give to another, regardless of what good you're trying to do in the government setting. It never works for the betterment of the people.
Thank you. What is your position on school choice and voucher programs? And should public education funds be redistributed to charter, private, and home schools? And why or why not? Mr. Pfluger?
Folks, education is a local and state issue. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that it remains that way. And right now in the state of Texas, $60 billion flows to our public schools. Now, I support the school choice. I think every parent has the right to make sure that their children get the best education they can. And even in this district, we see multiple school districts throughout the 29 counties that are doing things a little bit differently. And I think that's, in the pandemic, we can see that this is a critically important issue. But the fact is, of the $60 billion that's flowing to our public schools in the state of Texas, only $5 billion of that comes from the federal government. And that $5 billion is for school lunches and special education, and critically important. Now, there is a proposal right now to have funding for military families. That would affect San Angelo, and that's a good thing because the tax base is not quite representative of what the public schools are actually doing when it comes to military bases. Just look at communities like San Antonio that have a heavy military population. So we'll see whether or not that continues to go forward. But yes, I do support school choice. What I don't support is reducing the per capita funding to our public schools at the expense of school choice.
So pretty simple. If I have a kid and my kid goes to school A, I pay school A. If I have a kid goes to school B, I pay school B, and I don't pay school A. If school A is publicly funded, I don't get taxed to then send my kid to a private school. And to the vouchers, if you're going to then say each kid is representative of blank dollars, then wherever your kid goes gets the dollars, whether that's a public school, private school, charter school, it doesn't, homeschool, really wouldn't matter. Just wherever your kid goes is where you need to be paying. You don't need to be paying a private school and a public school tax.
Well, my family is full of educators, so you probably can imagine what my position on vouchers is going to be. I'm 100% opposed to vouchers. The primary reason is that it takes your public tax dollars and gives it out to private institutions to spend with little accountability, or no accountability, actually. We've been fighting this in the state of Texas for years, and voucher programs have really not gone anywhere. Now what we have is an effort through Secretary DeVos, the Trump administration, to do an end run around what the state of Texas has decided. I completely agree that it is a state and local issue, and I agree completely. But what we have is a federal government that now wants to intervene in that and bring federal dollars, your federal tax dollars, to spend for a voucher program. Senator Cruz introduced this piece of legislation. President Trump spoke about it in his State of the Union address. The idea is that we're going to create scholarships and organizations to funnel, that people can donate to scholarships and funnel monies around to essentially create a private voucher program that then they will get a 100% reimbursement from the federal government on a tax credit basis. That's a higher tax credit basis than you get on any charitable contribution that you make to any other charity in the United States. I'm 100% opposed to that, and I will vote against it.
Thank you. If elected and your party wins the White House, Who would you support for Speaker of the House? Just a name, no explanation. Tell us your thoughts. Mr. Cody.
Trey Gowdy.
I would vote for myself, of course, but I'm sure as a freshman I would support the Speaker Pelosi, assuming that she was up again.
I would support any Republican besides or in place of Speaker Pelosi. And I think right now the only leading candidate that we have is Kevin McCarthy.
That concludes the questions that we received from our membership. What we're going to do now, because we do have a little extra time, we're going to allow each candidate to tell us whatever they want, whatever their platform is, whatever they want to say, and they will have 6 minutes to each one, to talk each one to tell you about themselves. After that, that will conclude the forum. Mr. Hogue, would you go first?
Well, if you've seen, my campaign is focused on common sense solutions and bringing common decency back to government. One of those common sense solutions that I've seen in my own practice, and I know many of you in this room have seen, are issues related to independent contractors and joint employer liabilities for construction companies. I represent a lot of construction companies who have been faced with issues with the IRS, the Texas Workforce Commission, related to independent contractor liabilities. What we do need, and I just saw that the recent joint employer rule that was just implemented was thrown out, and so we have that litigation still going on. But what we really need is some certainty. What I have learned in dealing with the builders that I've worked with on these issues for years is we can comply with whatever rules we get, but the rules keep changing from administration to administration, and whether your folks are classified as employees or independent contractors, that's a huge issue. It has a huge economic issue for builders, and we need to address that, and we need to get some certainty to it, and the only way that we're really going to get that is through Congress. And that's why I'm focused more on let's bringing some of these issues, these regulations that we have that are causing so much problems for your business back into the control of Congress and addressing these issues there. Thank you very much. And thank you for the invite today.
Well, again, thank you all for being here. This is a unique opportunity, and I don't think that anybody in this room is going to dismiss the notion that on November 3rd, this is a critically important date in our country. And a lot of folks who have stood up before you as politicians have said this is the most important election. This is my first time running, and it is definitely the most important election. And we see the stakes are exceedingly high. And I would like to thank each and every one of you in this room, because it's uniquely American to own a home. For our middle class in our country and our citizens to not just have the opportunity to own a home, but to have a right to own a home. As a military officer, I've been stationed around the country, around the world, in fact, and I've seen countries where that's not the case. The American dream depends on folks having that opportunity, and where the government gets in the way through regulations and makes it hard for local banks. We hear this every county I go to. I went to 8 counties last week, and every single one of them where there was a banker present told me that the Dodd-Frank Act has overreached, that they can't provide a mortgage from the local bank to their folks in the community to buy a home because of the fact that these regulations, just like we've talked about in healthcare, have overreached and made it almost impossible. And I'd like to bring it to San Angelo. Let's talk about Goodfellow Air Force Base. Right now, by my best count, there's a little over 43,000 homes in San Angelo. The average on the MLS, the average length that a house stays on the MLS is 27 days. Very low rate of unoccupancy for homes. Very high and quick turnover of homes. We have a shortage here, and I know that the input prices and there's lumber issues. Our supply chains are hurting right now. I appreciate what everyone in this room has done to provide homes for people here. Goodfellow Air Force Base trains 12,000 airmen, soldiers, sailors, and Marines every single year who are right now, right this second, in every corner of the earth, keeping us safe. And their quality of life is dependent upon what y'all have done, and I applaud the efforts in this room. Thank you for what you have done, because you are part of national security. When you're providing a home for a family, and that service member deploys, and their family stays here, and they have a better experience, you are helping national security. And so I applaud everyone in this room for taking that seriously. And as we've looked at the 2019 economic development study here in San Angelo, I understand there's probably about 1,800 homes that are going to be added every single year. Our economy is going to continue to grow. Right now, this district has taken a hit. We have taken a big hit, whether it's agriculture and the commodity prices due to the pandemic, or the oil and gas industry, which since March 9th, we've lost 40,000 jobs in the Permian Basin. That is significant. And so we have a choice on November 3rd, and that choice is whether we're going to be for prosperity and growth and feeding that American dream, or whether we're going to restrict it and make it more difficult for the average American to run a business and to buy a home and to do what they need to do and live in fear of some sort of radical agenda or riot that prevents us from living that American dream. And I know that everybody in this room has been a part of building something, and the last thing that I want to see is the tearing down of that. And so, in closing, I'd like to, again, thank the Home Builders Association for the calls that y'all have made to the National Association of Home Builders, and thank you for your endorsement. I am pro-home. I have seen what it means around the country to not have that opportunity, and have fought for that right, and will continue to fight for that right, to make it as easy as possible for our citizens to buy homes and to live that American dream right here. I appreciate what everybody in this room does to support that. And on a personal note, on November 3rd, I'd like to ask you for your support. I'd like to ask you for your vote to represent a district that is truly special and doing things to keep this country safe, whether it's Goodfellow Air Force Base or providing 40% of the country's oil, or a tremendous amount of agriculture, cotton, cattle. We have a new land processing plant in San Angelo as of last Friday. Thank you for helping all of those industries, and thank you for having all of us here today.
So, it's pretty simple to me. Government, government, less government. They have a difference of opinion on government, but both of them will enact more government on all of you in some form or fashion. All my life, my father taught me, use up, wear out, make do, do without. And I will bring that to government, and I will slash and cut like never before to get government out of all of your lives, regardless. This is a home builders association, but regardless of what you do in life, government does not solve problems. They create more problems to legitimize more government. And with that being said, I'm not doing this because I want to be part of government. I think that we need people that are willing to run for office, even though they don't want to be there, to finally rectify many of these issues that government has created and return the freedom and the liberty to run your life as you see fit back to you. Because I don't know about all of you, but I have enough problems of my own. I can't solve yours. With that being said, I still have some more time. Anybody have any questions for me? All right. Well, since there was no explanation on why I chose who I chose, I picked Trey Gowdy because when he was a representative, I think he got caught up in the political aspects of the office. And now that he's back in the private sector, I would nominate him for Speaker of the House. I doubt he would take it, but I would nominate him because I think he would rise above the petty politics between the two parties and work to steer and work with both major parties as the speaker. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, candidates. We appreciate each of you taking the time to come and to be present for this forum. It is very important that we get the word out, and we thank KSAN for broadcasting this. We thank all of y'all for coming and being a part. One more thing I wanted to let you know is that the governor has extended early voting due to the COVID crisis. So it is my understanding early voting starts October 12th? 13th, on the 13th. And so it will extend until that last week of October. Voting again is November the 3rd. So with that, the forum is closed, and I'll turn it back over to Kristen.